Welcome back to Foodie Down Bronx. I'm your host, the Hungry Dominican. Now, we all know I love to stuff my face to my heart's content, but it's also very important to keep your heart healthy, especially right now in time for Love Day. So here now to discuss an upcoming new teaching kitchen facility in our own very borough, along with heart, healthy, and romantic meal tips for Valentine's Day, is Registered Dietitian and Chef Emily Schlag of Saint Barnabas Hospital. Chef,
thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
This is so awesome. Okay, so I had just mentioned to you before that in these demos, I haven't had someone come up here and sort of display so much healthy food in front of me. I'm usually out there kind of stuffing my face with anything. But before we move on to this beautiful salmon, and we have a pork tenderloin, and we have some avocado with some raspberries, I do want to mention the fact that you're from New Orleans, and this is technically your first time in the Bronx.
Yes, it is.
So what are you feeling? Like Honestly, how has it been so far?
It's been great. I'm really excited to be here. Like you said, I just came from New Orleans. I'm originally from Chicago.
Yeah.
I've lived in a lot of different places. And one of my favorite things about moving is experiencing the culture of wherever I move to. So New Orleans had a lot of culture. It had a lot of amazing food. Now I'm here in the Bronx. There's a lot of culture, a lot of amazing food.
Yes.
I'm excited to learn
culture.
about it.
That's one thing I'll tell you about the Bronx. We have a lot of culture here, a lot of different facets. I'm sure you'll love it. So I do want to get into the food a little bit because salmon is one of my weak points. I love salmon. I also love pork. And so I see right now that this is very much a flexitarian's type of display here of the types of food that we have, right? Because we're not limiting ourselves to one thing particularly. So can you break down exactly what we have? Because we have things bunched up together. So we have our salmon next to our greens and our...
So what I wanted to focus on today was a couple different options for maybe a heart-healthy meal that we could make for Valentine's Day or any other day if we really want to. And so when I think heart-healthy, I think healthy fats, lots of fiber, and watching how much salt we're using. We don't have to cut salt out completely, but we want to build flavor in other ways. So one way that we can get those healthy fats is going to be salmon. Salmon's going to be a really great source of omega-3 fatty acids. Those are really good for our heart health. They can help with blood pressure, preventing heart disease. So we want to make sure we get salmon or any kind of oily fish. So if we don't like salmon, we could do trout or tuna, mackerel, halibut, whatever we like. If we don't like salmon, there's other choices for us.
Right.
So we want these good healthy fats. So we have that covered. So now we need fiber. Where do we get fiber from? We can get it from a lot of vegetables. So anytime I'm doing a protein, I want to try to pair it with as many vegetables as possible.
Right.
What we have here, we have some kale, we have some fennel, which might be a little bit different, but has a lot of great flavor to it. And then we have a lot of flavoring options as well. So the great thing about salmon is it's really easy to cook, it's easy to overcook, but if we slow roast it, 300 degrees for about 30 minutes, it's going to come out perfectly.
Right.
It's not going to stink up our kitchen. It's not going to smell like fish. And we can roast it on top of the kale, on top of the fennel. And so what we have to go along with it are all of our flavoring agents. So I said we don't want too much salt. We can add a little salt. That's okay.
But it's always important not to overdo it with the sodium, essentially.
And so we can utilize things like citrus. Those add a bright flavor to our food. They give us the same effect that salt does. So if we are someone that likes to finish with some salt on top of our food, maybe we do a squeeze of citrus instead. It gives us that nice pop of flavor that we like.
Okay.
Then we can use aromatics as well. So we have some ginger, we have some shallots, we have a hot pepper. Those are all going to add a lot of interesting flavors to our food as well. And we don't have to do all three. We can mix and match depending on what flavor profile we like. And I love some fresh herbs to finish off a dish with. Again, it just gives it that nice fresh pop. So we have our healthy fats, we have our fiber, we have our flavoring agents. This is going to be a beautiful dinner that we can serve for Valentine's Day, and it's going to be heart healthy as well.
Now I just want to get back to the salmon real quick because you had mentioned that it's easy to overcook this. So what's the average time of preparing salmon if you're doing it, let's say, in an oven?
So for salmon, I actually just learned this and it worked out so well. If we slow roast it, 300 degrees, takes about 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
So we can remember 300, 30.
Perfect.
Easy for us to remember, especially because it's so thick like this.
Right.
By slow roasting it, you're giving yourself a little more leeway too. If we roast that salmon at 400 degrees, it's going to go from perfect to overdone, maybe in a matter of seconds. With this, if the timer goes off and we forget about it, maybe we have a couple minutes before it's going to be overcooked.
Right.
And to know if it's cooked perfectly is once that fish starts flaking apart, if you can just press on it and it falls apart, it's
Right,
done.
I usually just take a fork to it, and if I start seeing that little crispy top, then I know it's
Yep.
done,
Yep.
right? Awesome. Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to the center of my eye right here, the pork tenderloin.
Yes, I know you're very excited for this pork tenderloin. So the American Heart Association actually classifies pork tenderloin as a heart-healthy protein option, and that's because the pork tenderloin is really lean, which means it doesn't have a lot of fat to it. So if we look at the outside of the pork, we might see some fat in there, but the inside of the muscle doesn't really have a lot of fat to it.
Right.
But it's going to be very, very tender. And because it doesn't have a lot of fat to it, that gives us a lot of wiggle room for adding flavor to our pork.
Right.
So like I said, we want to make sure we're having healthy fats, so we can cook this in a heart-healthy oil like olive oil or canola oil. We have a little fat on the outside, but not too much.
That beautiful marbling right here, sure.
So that's going to crisp up really well in the oven. So we're going to roast this as well.
As well, okay.
For me, Valentine's Day is a day to indulge. You want to have a beautiful dish. I don't think there's anything more impressive than a nice roast.
I agree.
So we're going to roast this off. You can buy this pre-sliced at the store, but if you can find it whole, the whole loin like this, I prefer that. It's a little bit cheaper too.
Yeah, it's also more bang for your buck for sure.
And we're going to get so many servings out of this. And so because this is lean, we want to pack it full of flavor, and that's what this plate right here is for.
Right.
So we have some mushrooms on there. Mushrooms have something called umami, that fifth taste. And umami roughly translates to deliciousness from Japanese. So it's that savory, meaty, delicious flavor. It makes us want to go back for another bite of food. So we're going to roast those mushrooms alongside that pork. We're going to get some great umami along with that pork, and we're going to season it with some fresh rosemary, some thyme, some shallots again, so we can use shallots in a couple different ways.
Right.
And maybe we chop up those herbs, that shallot, make a marinade.
Right.
Maybe with some orange or some lemon, rub that on the pork and roast it. It's going to be so good.
And it's important for people to know that mushrooms usually will soak up whatever you're sort of cooking it next to, so you can actually have that its own umami flavor, and then if you cook it next to your pork, it sort of absorbs that flavor.
So one thing I love to do is to roast my meats on a bed of vegetables, because they absorb all of those flavors.
Right.
So maybe we roughly chop those mushrooms or slice them up kind of thick so they're still meaty, put those in a pan, put that pork on top. They're all going to roast together.
Beautiful.
Those mushrooms are going to take on that pork flavor.
Yes.
That pork's going to take on those mushrooms, that mushroom flavor, and it's just going to be so delicious.
It's like a marriage for Valentine's Day. Beautiful.
We're all coming together.
Beautiful.
We're with the ones we love, the porks with the mushrooms.
Exactly.
They love each
I love
other.
It. That's
It's going to be
awesome.
great.
That's great.
And so, again, vegetables. So we're always trying to pair things with as many vegetables as we can. I don't like doing one vegetable. I think that's boring. So just like with the salmon, how we had kale and fennel, we have a lot of choices here as well. I really love these carrots that come with the tops because we can actually use these tops. We can turn these into a salad. We can puree them into a pesto.
I would have never even assumed I could.
They're totally edible. They have a pretty mild flavor too. So we can puree those up, make a really delicious sauce with them.
Right.
So we can roast those carrots, use the top somewhere else. We can roast the asparagus alongside the carrots, or maybe we go to the grocery store, we had our heart set on asparagus and they're out, or it doesn't look good.
Right.
We can use other vegetables as well. We could do some nice squash. We could even do the kale or the fennel with the pork if we want to. We can be really flexible with what we're doing.
I love this tip. Again, going back to this, I would have never assumed I could do anything with this at all. So before we move on to the dessert here, because I'm so curious about the avocado and the raspberries, tell me a little bit about your work with Saint Barnabas Hospital. And again, this connects to your trip from New Orleans to the Bronx. So what exactly are you planning for the Bronx going forward?
So what we're doing is we are going to be opening a health and wellness center. So there's going to be some clinics on the first floor of our building. On the second floor, there's going to be a teaching kitchen. That's where I'm going to be. A fitness center. And then on the roof of our building, we're actually going to have a rooftop farm. So it's all going to be connected. My hope for the kitchen is that people will come in. We're going to do cooking classes with the community, with medical students, with medical residents, with anyone that wants to come. And we're going to teach them how to cook healthy, how to be healthy. We're going to give people tips and tricks on what to look for at the grocery store.
Right.
We really want to give people the tools that they need so they can go home, take what they learn at the kitchen and apply that to what they're already doing at home.
That's awesome. So a reminder, that's the Teaching Kitchen and Center for Culinary Medicine.
Yes.
Right? It will be happening at the SBH, Saint Barnabas Hospital, Health and Wellness Center. And this is happening coming this spring.
Yes.
Right? So we're close to the opening day.
Yep, so we're under construction right now. That's going to be wrapping up soon. We're hoping to be open sometime in June.
Fantastic.
So closer to summer, but pretty
All
soon
right.
still.
Late spring, early summer.
It's coming up fast.
So now that we've had our salmon and our pork tenderloin with the awesome tip about the carrots here, avocado,
Yes.
raspberry, what's going on here?
I know. It looks like a strange thing to have together on the plate. So again, heart healthy, we want healthy fats, but we still want to have dessert. We want to indulge a little bit. So we have some chocolate chips over here too. So avocados have a lot of healthy fats in them. They're called monounsaturated fats. Anytime I hear unsaturated, I know that's going to be a heart healthy fat.
Right.
So we're going to pair the avocado with the chocolate. We're going to melt down some chocolate chips. We're actually going to puree that with the avocado and make a chocolate mousse out of it. So we're going to add a little cocoa powder, a little milk to that, just a little bit of maple syrup for a touch of sweetness. And when we whiz that in the blender, it incorporates air, and we can make a mousse out of that. And the avocado is going to replace any heavy cream that we might normally add to a mousse.
Right.
Because the chocolate has such a strong flavor, we're not even going to taste that avocado, but it's going to be creamy. It's going to have a great mouthfeel to it.
So it's sort of like a base for it? It's just sort of like, it lends to the texture of it, but it doesn't really overwhelm the chocolate, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's replacing that butter, that cream that we might normally put in something like a mousse.
Right.
It's giving it that fatty base that we come to expect when we have a chocolatey rich dessert like that.
So you don't even have to use butter in that sense. You could
Nope.
you could put in avocado for that.
And so we have some berries here. Again, I'm always trying to get a little more fiber when I can.
Sure.
So we have some raspberries that we can put on top of that mousse. The great thing about the mousse, it could be made up to 3 days ahead of time. So we make that ahead of time. Maybe we go to the store and we see some lovely raspberries on sale. We can put that on top of our mousse and have a really great dessert. The raspberries are going to be nice and tart and sweet. That's going to complement really well to the fatty, rich creaminess with the mousse that we're making. So they're going to complement each other really well. And you don't have to use raspberries. I know it's wintertime. Sometimes they're harder to find. We could do blueberries, strawberries, cherries. We could even use frozen fruit and make a little compote in it, maybe microwave that frozen fruit so it gets syrupy, put that on top. We can be really flexible with what we're using here.
That's awesome. That sounds like a great dessert. Thank you, Emily. This is really awesome. Guys, you'll be able to learn more cooking tips like today and visit Chef Emily at the Saint Barnabas Teaching Kitchen soon. Visit sbhny.org for more information. All right, guys, that's all for the show. Thank you again for tuning in, and thank you to our guests today for joining me. Tune in every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. here on BronxNet Optimum 67 and FiOS 33. Also, make sure to tune in on the go at bronxnet.org and find us on YouTube. From BronxNet to the world, this is Foodie Down Bronx. I'm your host, Em, the Hungry Dominican, always reminding you to feed your mind, feed your body, and if you see me coming along, feed me. Adios.